Hey everybody, Robert Preston Jr. here with DouglasNow.com. Got a couple of things I want to talk about, hopefully quickly, on this Monday afternoon, July 29th. We are kicking off the start of a fifth week of July. I had thought there would be a county commission meeting this morning, but there wasn't because it is a fifth week, so things will be a little bit slow from a government standpoint this week. And then of course next week school starts. I may have a few comments about that moving forward, but a few things I want to talk about here this afternoon. Those of you who got the alert that we were about to go live, I mentioned in that post a few of the bullet points we want to talk about. First of all, I want to go back to something we mentioned last week. We were talking about the city commission wrap up and some of the stuff that went on in the city commission meeting. And one of the items that a few of our commissioners want to talk about was taking hiring and firing away from the city manager and putting it more into the control of the mayor and the city commission. That had been, I don't know if the mayor and commission had complete control over hiring and firing a few years ago, but they had a lot of influence over it, and this goes back to 2013. It was under then city manager Terrell Jacobs. The city changed the policy to where it went, the hiring and firing went to the city manager. It was taken away from the mayor and the commission, as well it should have been. And the reason why was because, as you could well imagine, it caused a lot of problems. And at least one, well, of the two commissioners who really want to talk about this, only one was on the board back then, but that particular commissioner was too involved in hiring and firing and caused a lot of chaos and a lot of problems. So City Manager Jacobs wisely got that changed. And I say he got that changed. He put it on the agenda. I'm quite sure, and I wasn't covering news back then. Douglas Now was not in business in 2013, so I wasn't going to city commission meetings and paying a lot of attention to it. So I don't know the exact vote, don't remember the discussion, but I can imagine that it was not unanimous. But the point is that it caused a lot of problems back, 6 years or so ago, so it was changed. Now, at least two commissioners want to bring it back to where it was back then. And you can see just from the problems it caused the other night, if they did that again, it would cause even more problems. I don't think there are the votes on the city commission to do that. At least there shouldn't be. So hopefully that will stay the same. I just wanted to mention that. I had a few people send me some information about it. I talked to a few folks last week, but that did in fact happen. The mayor and the commission used to have more to say over hiring and firing. That was changed in 2013 because it caused a lot of problems, and now we have two commissioners wanting to put that control back into the hands of the mayor and the commission. It does not need to be there. It needs to be exactly where it is with the city manager. I'm quite sure the city manager doesn't like it and would rather have somebody else handle it, but it needs to be in the city manager's office, whoever the city manager happens to be. So a little bit of history there. Don't need to go back to the way it was. Also, many of you tuned in Wednesday night / Thursday morning when we covered a prank 911 call that sent a host of deputies and ambulances and everything else out south of Douglas to Rebecca Waldron Road. I have asked the sheriff's office for more information on that, for them to make a statement as far as any arrest, what status of the investigation. Are they trying to track these people down? There was a name that came out a few minutes after the investigation wrapped up of someone they were going to question, going to look to, try to figure out what was going on. Have not heard a single statement from any law enforcement agency about that call on Thursday night. Well, Thursday morning, Wednesday night, Thursday morning, right after midnight. Actually, I think the call came in right before midnight. We didn't log on till around midnight, so it was technically Thursday morning we began our coverage. But the sheriff's office has not released a statement on that. I've asked for it late last week, have not gotten any reply, not even a, we're not going to make a statement. So who knows where that is. They haven't made a statement on the Facebook page. There was another prank call Friday night / Saturday morning. I don't know, maybe 1 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. Someone called in, said there was a hostage situation at Walmart. This time mentioned there was a bomb. I didn't find out about this until Saturday, late Saturday morning. It said there was a bomb. City police handled this. Remember, the county responded out on Rebecca Walton Road. The city responded to this call. Fire department came out because of the bomb threat. Didn't take long to realize that it was not a real call. It was another prank call. Officers did speak to the person who made the call. It was not in Coffee County. Called in on a computer, not on a phone, but on a computer. And they were able to make contact with this individual. I don't know anything about any charges. I checked the city police department Facebook page. They have not made a statement. I'm going to check with them and see if they'll make a statement about that. They're usually a little bit more timely in how they respond than some of the other agencies. So maybe they will, maybe they won't. I hope they do, because I had people talk to me about that. I went to bed right before that call came in. I stayed up late, went to the movies late Friday night, but I didn't find out about it till mid-morning on Saturday. So again, second prank call. Are they related? Do they think the same person did it? Don't know. Again, nobody's made a statement yet. However, there have been two prank calls very close to each other that were very similar. So is it a copycat situation? Don't know. Your mind kind of runs wild with things like this. But both calls were determined to be pranks. But if you hear about another call, there was in fact a second prank call. This one again around 1 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. Now, and if we get any more information, we'll let you know on that. We'll let you know what's going on with that. Board of Education met on Thursday night, and what's interesting is it's kind of funny how the city, county, and the school board conduct their meetings. Board of Education is a little bit different because you're dealing with kids, and with the sheer number of kids we've got, somebody's always doing something remarkable. So you have to do the recognitions for both employees and for students before the meeting. You have a lot of boxes you have to check off with hearing reports and the different education initiatives and the grants and things like that. And you can get lost in alphabet soup at a Board of Education meeting, because when educators start talking, it sounds like the military, okay? And my wife is a teacher. She does that to me. She'll carry on for 10 minutes and spout off all these acronyms about things. And I just have to stop her and say, I have no idea what you're talking about. I could get a little bit of a picture of what I think it is, but honestly, I don't know, because got a phone call just in, but they speak in code. So you kind of have to wade through that. The school board does a pretty good job of trying to explain that to people who may not understand all that, but you have to sit through some of that. And they design it. They design their meetings and organize their meetings such that in the general meeting, you don't get into a lot of junk like you do in the city, okay? They get into some stuff in the work session. If you want to hear what's going on, what's really going on, you go to the work session at 5:30. That is open to the public. The general meeting starts at 7:30. It's the fourth Thursday of each month. I went to the work session, and the work sessions can last a long time, but this one didn't last very long. Here are the highlights from the Board of Education work session. The last Board of Education meeting before school starts, unless there's a special called meeting, the last regularly scheduled meeting before school starts. So they had to wrap up a lot of loose ends for what's about to happen. The financial report, and again, the financial report's kind of difficult to follow sometimes because there's so many different directions it can go. Basically, I got something there. Something popped up I need to get rid of. But for the most part, the school system is in very good shape financially. The collections for the East Blost are really strong. The school system is doing very, very well financially. The school board discussed the tax digest, the millage rate for the 6th year in a row. The board voted to roll back the millage rate. It currently stands at 16.036. They're going to roll it back to 16.021. Now, this is, of course, pending approval by the county. The county ultimately approves this stuff, but the school board, for the 6th year in a row, wants to roll back the millage. So the county usually follows along with what their recommendations are. So your school taxes, or the school millage rate, should go down. Let's see, 21st Century Community Learning Centers grant. The school system got this grant again, $1.75 million over the next 5 years, $350,000 for fiscal year 20. will come to Coffee County. They're going to add a learning center at the freshman campus, and they're also using that at the Boys and Girls Club as well. So there's a lot of money going to the Boys and Girls Club, and they're starting a new learning center at the freshman campus. If you want to know the nuts and bolts of that and how all that will play out, contact your Board of Education representative, and they can give you that information. Also, $75,000 school improvement grant or school improvement funds for the Career Academy. This will help improve the graduation rate. Also, the FY18 audit report, without going into all the various planks of that, the audit report is pretty good. So they also discussed, the board also discussed the county employability skills framework, and this is another one of those education buzzword projects, initiatives, what have you, where they're going to try to implement initiatives or strategies to improve the employability skills, college readiness, that kind of thing for students. And it's going to start at the elementary level and go all the way up to the high school level. And I've got 3 pages of stuff on the employability framework. What's kind of interesting is looking at this for the elementary students, K through 5 job skills, and I just thought this was kind of interesting. Here are a few things in the K through 5 job skills. Ultimately, it says be a leader, be a team player, communicate and work well with others, work productively, okay? Respects adults and authority figures, compliments others' work, interacts positively with classmates and works cooperative with others, sets goals, organized, tells the truth. Such a shame we have to make that an initiative, tell the truth. People should be telling the truth anyway, but we know the time in which we live. Tell the truth has to be, a specifically listed initiative. People don't just value that anymore. Tell the truth, good character and manners, shares ideas, respects the ideas of others, respects and accepts others, asks appropriate questions, comes to school and arrives on time. Of course, when you're dealing in an elementary setting, that's more on the parents than it is on the kids. If a kid's late to elementary school, it's probably not his fault, it's his parents' fault for not taking care of them and getting them to the car on time or getting them out to the bus stop on time. Left to their own devices, kids are easily distracted. And while there are a few kids, second, third, fourth graders who will get up on time and get ready to go without someone driving them, literally and figuratively, they're probably not going to do it. So comes to school and arrives on time would fall more on parents and kids. Learns from mistakes, accepts constructive criticisms, follows directions and rules, accepts responsibility for actions, works independently, understands mistakes are not wrong or bad, understands the concept of compromise, uses technology to communicate, and there's more on this, but this is kind of stuff. I'm reading this and I'm thinking, this is K through 5. Most adults I know need a refresher on this. Most adults I know aren't very good at a lot of this stuff. Telling the truth is organized, kind of hit me a little bit home. I keep the door to my office shut, and nobody needs to go in my office. None whatsoever. Understands the concept of compromise. We do not live in a time that values compromise. It is my way or the highway, figuratively speaking, of course. But anyway, I thought, geez, you could probably just take this and run it all the way from K through 12 and still have people who graduated without understanding these. But there's a lot of other stuff here. We've got it for grades 6 through 12, and then career content, knowledge, and all that. So that's, when you go to school board meetings, this is the kind of stuff you get into. Yeah, you talk about money, you talk about out-of-state field trips, you find out about how many bags of vomit cleanup you're going to have to buy, and you will discuss that in school board meetings. That is important in some of our schools. And then when it comes to hiring and firing, you're going to get into a lot of stuff with it too, because that's where your trouble comes in typically. Hiring and firing and discipline, and those are a part of the school system. But we did not have to deal with that the other night. Work session lasted just a couple of minutes. Now, and if you want more on that, more information on the school board, again, contact your school board representative or go to the meetings. You go to the work session. You get lucky, you don't have to sit through the rest of the meeting. Starting at 7:30 is a little crazy. It can go late. But again, they try to take steps to avoid that and keep that from happening. So they do all the other stuff in the work session, and that's where they have audience participation. If you have a complaint, you will be heard in the work session, not in the general meeting. Now, these meetings are also taped and put on YouTube, so you can go watch them as well. And they do a good job with technology and trying to explain all that's going on in the school system. Next, I'm going to try to wrap this up as quickly as I can. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but there's something that we do need to discuss. I don't know if you remember this. This has made its rounds on social media in the last week or so. I guess today's the 29th. The verdict in this case came down on the 10th of July, so 19 days ago, and it took a little bit of time before it filtered its way back here to Coffee County. And I don't think, to my knowledge, I could be wrong, but to my knowledge, I don't think any local media have picked up on it. We haven't done anything on it. But this is the verdict in the case in which a Coffee County deputy back in 2014, while trying to shoot a dog, shot a 10-year-old boy in the leg. The boy's family filed a lawsuit against the county and against the deputy and the sheriff's office and all that. Actually, I have a copy of the case right here, 43 pages, including the majority opinion and the dissenting opinion, as filed again on July 10th of 2019. This was in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. Judges Wilson, Branch, and Anderson are the judges that presided over this. Now, ultimately, the court ruled, and since it was it appears to be a three-panel judge, a panel of three judges hearing the case, I guess the opinion was 2-1 in favor of what's the right word? It's a civil claim, so it's not, so it's not a not guilty, but basically they did not find that the deputy who shot the 10-year-old child was at fault. The family sued for $4 million. I didn't think that was an excessive amount. Sued for $4 million, but under the concept of qualified immunity, the judges ruled that the officer was not at fault for shooting the 10-year-old boy. Now, let's back up a little bit for those of you who may not be familiar with what we're talking about. Douglas Now began publishing in late June, early July of 2014. Right as we went online, literally all hell broke loose in Coffee County. We had arsons, we had armed robberies, we had an officer-involved shooting, we had this incident happen, all in the span of just a few short weeks. And we signed on and started our work at the right time. There hadn't been a lot happening. All of a sudden it blew up right when we went on, and we were able to show the value of having news in real time locally almost immediately. So let's go back to what happened in July of 2014. There were a couple of armed robberies in Douglas. In the course of investigating, I think one of them was in Pearson. Well, I say in Douglas. I think it was an armed robbery in Pearson. They came to Douglas, robbed one of the flash foods here, maybe the one on the south end of town. Officers responded to a car matching the description of the one that left the armed robbery, stopped the car over by Walmart Distribution Center. A couple of guys got out. One of them shot a police officer, okay? The shooter was Christopher Barnett, who was eventually captured. He fled the scene. He was eventually captured, sentenced to life in prison back in October of 2015. But Christopher Barnett shot Douglas police officer Larry Carter in the leg. Now, it wasn't a life-threatening wound, but it shot Officer Carter in the leg. He was transferred to Savannah, if I remember correctly, where he was treated, and he recovered completely from his injuries. However, for a period of a day or so, we had someone who had taken a shot at a police officer running around Coffee County. Obviously, emotions were very high. Officers were on edge. Everybody was trying to catch this guy. sheriff's office got a call that Barnett might be out at a residence on Burton Road out in the county. So of course they sent a number of units out there to Burton Road. They went to the location where Barnett was supposed to have been. He was not there. In the process, they got everybody out on the ground doing their investigation that they do. And during the course of that investigation, Coffee County Deputy Michael Vickers discharged his firearm while trying to shoot a dog that approached him. Now, he discharged the firearm, again, discharged a firearm, that's what you get in police reports. He tried to kill the dog, okay? It was apparently, if I remember correctly, a pit bulldog or pit bulldog mix or something like that, menacing looking dog. Came up on the porch, and it wasn't a very big porch. Everything happened in very close quarters. And I believe I read somewhere where he fired 2 shots, but we know he at least fired 1 shot, and he missed the dog, and the dog didn't even get injured. The dog was never hit, but he missed the dog, but shot a 10-year-old boy in the back of the leg, in the knee. Okay, now the boy was taken for treatment, and he recovered. It was a non-life-threatening injury. I don't think it required surgery. It didn't do any damage to the knee joint. Again, I'm going off of memory here. The lawsuit was filed. Everybody knew there was going to be a lawsuit. Something like this happens, you expect 2 things. 1, a lawsuit, and when that lawsuit gets filed, somebody's going to get paid. Okay? Amy Corbett, who was the parent and guardian of the 10-year-old boy, filed the lawsuit, and according to the documentation I have here, it was filed against Michael Vickers, the defendant. All right, the plaintiff was Amy Corbett, the defendant is Michael Vickers, the deputy. Now, there's 37 pages here of the majority opinion, and then about 6 pages of the dissenting opinion. Judge Charles Wilson, did not agree with the majority opinion and wrote a short but at times very scathing dissent of what happened. Basically, what the judges said is that because of qualified immunity, Officer Vickers was not responsible for the injuries that happened to the 10-year-old boy. Now, I don't want to get into all the specifics. If you want to read this stuff, this case, it took me about 5 minutes to find it online. It's readily available. But the idea of qualified immunity means that in the course of carrying out the duties of his job, this incident happened, the shooting happened, and because it happened during the course of his normal duties, he was not subject to penalty for that. Now, you talk to people who were there, talk to people who have firsthand knowledge of it, and there's some differing opinions about what went on. I know the people involved all the way around on this, so it's a little bit interesting making comments on this thing, but I don't see how any way that qualified immunity would apply here. I would have expected anybody, if anybody in my family was involved in something like this, I would expect them to be held responsible. The dog was not aggressive, and it's in the suit here that the dog was not threatening. The dog came up on the porch. It's a very small porch on a mobile home, and it wasn't a big wide covered porch. It was just a set of steps in a small area. There are pictures of it online. Some folks did some coverage on it. You could see how it was, but it was just Officer Vickers, the dog, the child, and other children were all within a few feet of each other. Discharged his weapon, missed the dog, hit the boy in the leg. Okay, these 2 judges, Branch and Anderson, believe that qualified immunity applies. I've read the opinion. These guys are pretty brilliant judges. They're pretty solid, but I can't for the life of me see how it applies. But again, that was the ruling. Judge Wilson made this statement in his dissent. I feel like it's worth reading this. Let me see if I can pull this up. That's on page 37. Wait a minute. This is what they said, since we're here. Let me go ahead and read this. This is the majority opinion, and this is straight off of page 37 of the lawsuit. In conclusion, we hold that Vickers is entitled to qualified immunity because at the time of the incident giving rise to this appeal, there was no clearly established law making it apparent to any reasonable officer in Vickers' shoes that his actions in firing at the dog and accidentally shooting the minor would violate the Fourth Amendment. Because we find no violation of a clearly established right, we need not reach the other qualified immunity question of whether a constitutional violation occurred in the first place. This opinion expressly takes no position as to that question. The order of the district court denying Vickers' motion to dismiss is hereby reversed, and the case is remanded to the district court with instructions to dismiss the action against Vickers. So it says there was no clearly established law making it apparent to any reasonable officer in Vickers' shoes that his actions in firing at the dog and accidentally shooting the minor would violate the Fourth Amendment. Because we find no violation of a clearly established right, we need not reach the other qualified immunity question. So anyway, that's what they say. There are some opinions out there, some very harsh opinions out there about this online, where some legal scholars and legal analysts who are extremely extremely well versed in these, who disagree with this decision vehemently. Okay, disagree with it vehemently. This is what Judge Wilson said in part of his dissent. It says it is also relevant that Officer Vickers was a mere 1.5 feet from the minor and was only a few feet away from several other children. Nonetheless, facing no apparent threat, again, and it's in here that the dog was not threatening anybody. Nonetheless, facing no apparent threat, Officer Vickers chose to fire his lethal weapon in the direction of these children. No reasonable officer would engage in such recklessness, and no reasonable officer would think that such recklessness was lawful. Therefore, I agree with the district court that Officer Vickers should not be entitled to qualified immunity. So I think that's a pretty damning statement. Nonetheless, these two sentences, nonetheless, facing no apparent threat, Officer Vickers chose to fire his lethal weapon in the direction of these children. No reasonable officer would engage in such recklessness, and no reasonable officer would think that such recklessness was lawful. Again, let's go back and look at this. It is irrelevant. It is also relevant that Officer Vickers was a mere 1.5 feet from the minor, 18 inches. 18 inches, fired a gun, missed, and hit a child. Yet, court rules that because of qualified immunity, the case should be dismissed. And it has been. I don't know what the next step is in appealing this. I don't know if there's another step. I don't know what it is beyond the 11th Circuit Court. I don't know if if the next step up is the Supreme Court or what. So I don't know if it's dead or it will continue. But nonetheless, a lot of people have asked questions about that over the years. What's happened? What's the status of the lawsuit? What came of it? As of 19 days ago, the lawsuit was dismissed. And again, I don't understand it. It seems that the judge's decision is based on shaky legal grounds at best. But again, this is what they decided. This is what they found, and barring any other appeals, it has been dismissed. So that's the resolution of that. That's what's happening in Douglas and Coffee County right now. Going to be slow this week from a government standpoint. We're in the piece of a fifth week, and everything kind of slows down. There's nothing scheduled, no court cases, no meetings, no nothing. Kind of get a little bit, and given the time of the year that this is, you get a little bit of calm before the storm, because next week everybody's going back to school. Teachers are already working. Some of our school systems nearby are already in school. Some start in July. And I know there's not a lot of difference between late July and in early August, just a couple days. But there's just something about going to school in July that would irritate me. I would not be in favor of starting school in July. I'm also not in favor of starting school in August, but nobody asked me. My preferred start date for school, I've talked about this a little bit in the past, is would be the first day after Labor Day. Or if you want to give them to Wednesday, the first day after Labor Day. That's a Tuesday, always. because Labor Day is always on a Monday. But I should say the week after Labor Day. I don't think you should start school in August. I just don't think you should start school in August. You don't have to start school as late as you did when we were in school. I'm not one of these who says you should do it the way we used to do it, because that's the way we used to do it. I know the school year is structured a little bit differently. I would like to see the school year tightened up. I would like to see some of these holidays throughout the year kind of squeezed. You know, I don't like fall break. I don't like the way they do some of this other stuff. Just start school, get into September, let the kids have all of June, all of July, and all of August. Start school in September, squeeze some of these holidays out, get it done, and then get out of school in late May or early June. If they don't get all of June, you know, get most of June out, all of July and all of August. Again, it's just hard to go to school and going to football games. You go to a ball game, it's 3,000 degrees outside, because it doesn't cool off now until November. It really doesn't. So you'll still have some warm days, but it's very difficult to get into the school spirit when you start school in August. Nobody asked me. Nobody's going to ask me. Although the state did do a study last year to determine when the optimum time to start school would be. The Senate did that, the state Senate, and ultimately they came up with their own findings. But they said we're not going to push this on school systems. We will let the local systems decide when they start school. But here's what we found, here's what we think, here are our recommendations. And I don't really remember what that report said their recommendations were. But you got to look at things like, you know, heating and cooling, electricity. You think about 2 extra weeks of running air conditioning wide open at these schools, particularly this time of the year. It's going to be anyway, nobody asked my opinion, but that's it. We start school too early. Too many holidays during the school year. And my wife's going to kill me on that. You're not a teacher. You don't understand. You don't know. I know I don't understand from that standpoint. But I do think we start school way too early. So anyway, that's what's going on here in Douglas and Coffee County. If we get statements from the Sheriff's Office, Police Department about these prank calls, we'll let you know if anything else happens. If somebody decides to go on a pre-first day of school crime spree of some kind, we'll cover that as well. People are always getting restless, and nobody is going to be quiet for very long. Something will inevitably happen. We hope it's not too bad. I get accused of liking all the bad news. I don't like it. I like it when things are quiet. I like it when we're not out doing this kind of stuff. But unfortunately, given our community, given some of the elements that are here, that will not be the case for very long. Right now, though, it has been fairly quiet, not a lot going on. So anyway, something happens, we'll let you know. Thank you guys for watching. Y'all have a great week. Enjoy the last week. Parents, teachers, everybody, enjoy this last week before we get back to the grind next week. And hopefully we will have a great school year all the way around. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.